Welcome to Stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be the WWE Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we got an Olympian that was a four-time All-American in college, one of the best amateur wrestlers, made it to the Olympics. He is a Lou Thez Award recipient. He is in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. He is Mr. Bob Roop, and it's an honor for us to have you on here. Thank you, Bob, for coming.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on with you.
Well, Bob, you know, you and I go way back, and John and I discussed, you know, who we come on, and I brought your name up, and you know, right away he said Bob Roop, the Olympian, you know. So you know, what a pleasure it is to have you. You know, you got some great stories, I know, because I shared a lot of them with you, and then but once you left Florida, you kind of developed a career and a name for yourself out in California and up in Tennessee and other parts that you went there. So we'll get into it. But before we get into the pro stuff, as John mentioned, you were Olympian. You weren't the first Olympian, but you were one of the very first Olympians. And you kind of set the trend for myself and my brother and several other guys who followed that after you to come out of the college wrestling ranks and become a professional wrestler. And I think I met you. I just got out of college. I think it was in January of '69 when I came to Florida. You were down here working, but I've researched your story, but share the story with us on how you became a professional, because you weren't a fan growing up at all, but you'd run into various pro wrestlers who had been in amateur wrestling through the Olympic tryouts and stuff like that. So kind of take us into that, the Baron von Raschke and all the other stories that you have.
Well, the first part is about the timing, and the part me being ahead of you. Jack had started, your brother had started, I believe 6 or 8 years before I did. I didn't start till '69 either. I graduated in 1969. If you were there, if you were in the business in January '69, you were actually in the business before I was.
69, Bob, not 50.
69, yeah,
Okay.
69. I'm not that, I'm old.
Well, I'm hard of hearing.
I'm old, but I didn't get in the business till I was about almost 27.
Wow.
Because I was in the service for 3 years and then I took 6 years to go through college. So
you're on the 6-year plan.
Yes.
Bradshaw and I was on that plan too, and I'm still kind of working on my 6-year plan.
Me too.
Well, the hard part is trying to keep a scholarship for 6 years. You know, I didn't want to have to pay for it, and I managed to do it one way or another. But just a point, the All-American wasn't. I was in college at the time, but it wasn't NCAA. The All-Americans awards were for National Amateur Athletic Union, National AAU.
Right.
I wrestled in those while I was in college, and I wrestled in 6 tournaments in 3 years. In 4 years, 6 tournaments. I wrestled both freestyle and Greco-Roman the first year, and then just Greco-Roman for the next 4 years. So, and I placed in 5 of the tournaments, and if you place in the top 4, you're an All-American. I took a 4th, 2/3, a 2nd, and a 1st. In the one freestyle tournament, I didn't place. I think I took 5th, but and that way you get my very last tournament. In fact, my very last match was the one that I won I wrestled a Canadian in the 1969 National AAU Greco-Roman, and it was at light heavyweight at 220 pounds, which was actually where I should have been wrestling. And I was too small to be a heavyweight in the Olympics. Those guys are humongous compared to me, and in terms of, I mean, size and bone structure and all that. But yeah, I wanted to correct that, because there's nothing worse than an amateur wrestler taking credit for something he didn't actually do. So I wanted to make sure that was. But what happened was it was getting time to graduate, and I had a degree in just a liberal arts degree because I had 3 or 4 different majors during school. And about 4 months before graduation, one of my teammates ran into a wrestler named Lars Anderson,
Right.
who was an amateur named Larry Hynemi, who I
Larry.
knew was an amateur. I'd run into him in the '64 Olympic tryouts in New York, and got to know him. And my friend said that Larry was looking. He was big. He looked good. He blonde. He bleached his hair. He was driving a new Cadillac. Had a diamond ring. And Larry or Lars told my teammate that in 2 years he had made $75,000, and that part sounded okay. But he said he also in 2 years he had been to Japan twice and Australia twice, and that's what when I heard that, that's when my ears perked up because I wanted to travel. I mean, as weird as it might sound, the main reason I got in the wrestling business was I wanted to travel.
You picked the right business.
Well, I did, and I did that. I mean, I traveled. I wrestled in 13 foreign countries and traveled all. I was thinking about anticipating this interview. And in one summer, I worked in England and worked through up in Wales and then Scotland and Ireland, not Ireland, Scotland. And then later that year, I mean, a couple weeks later, I went to a tournament in Dortmund, Germany that had about 30 wrestlers in it. And it was a month. We had a month of matches, 7 nights a week. And the wrestlers were from all over. They were from all over Europe, from Spain, there was wrestlers from South Africa, there was one from the Middle East, there was a couple one from Japan, there was a Korean wrestler, and not the style was basically the same. But having all these different guys to work with was a real learning experience as far as the pro part of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. The idea of traveling appealed to me. We had a trainer in college who knew Sam Muchnick. I was at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, Illinois. Sam had his business in St. Louis, which was about 110 miles away. So the trainer was a good guy, and I wasn't hurt a lot, but I had a bad knee one year, and I got to know him. I was in that training room for about 2 months every day. And so he set me up with an interview to Sam Muchnick. And I went down to see Sam, and it was funny because I told him I was interested in getting a business. He said, "Well, what are you doing? Where are you from? What's going on?" I said, "Well, I'm about to graduate from college." He said, "You're about to graduate from college and you want to get in the wrestling business?" He said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you. I'd go do something else." I said, "Well, no, humor me. I want to give it a try."
And now this is the president of the National Wrestling Alliance, and
Yes.
he's trying to talk a Olympian that we got the prospect of getting into business that came to him. He's trying to talk him out of getting into business.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a salesman for the NWA. Right?
Yeah. Gee, the president himself told me, "No, you shouldn't be in my business. Do anything else." But I persevered, and I told him I asked his advice. He said there were two promoters that really liked or used amateurs in their promotion a lot. One was Vern Gagne up in Minnesota, and the other one was Eddie Graham in Florida. Well, I'm in Michigan right now, in Lansing, Michigan. That's where I grew up. And we have winters, and I mean, not always brutal, but a lot of times just brutal winters. And, I said, Florida or Minnesota, I'll take Florida. He could have told me Eddie was Satan incarnate. I said, "Well, I'll warm up to him, I'll take him, well, whoever it is." And that's how I got started. I still had one more tournament to go, and Eddie Graham and Lester Welch, who was I believe, I'm not sure if he had a piece of the Florida office yet, but he was a friend of Graham's. And they came up to, the tournament was in Detroit, and they came up for the tournament, and that was the one I happened to win. And we went to the banquet afterward, and there was a note there that during the banquet, the gentleman who ran the Detroit Athletic Club was also a big wig in the AAU. And one of the things he mentioned that night, now Eddie stood out. Eddie had, you remember, he had that the hair, and he was tanned, and he had that gold watch with a great big like silver dollars, or I mean gold dollars on it. I mean, and
Eddie presented himself well all the time, didn't he?
yeah, he looked like $1 million. He looked like those movies where everything's in black and white, and all of a sudden one character walks in Technicolor. That's what Eddie looked like, because all wrestlers are, we don't dress, we're not flashy. Most amateur wrestlers aren't flashy. So
they don't have the money to be flashy.
No, absolutely not. Instead of working at the drugstore, they're out there at wrestling practice. But this guy's name was Dean Rockwell, and he said, we have a guest here tonight I would like to mention. He has contributed to the National AAU Wrestling Foundation very generously over the years, Mr. Eddie Graham. I'm sitting at a table with this guy, and I just met him about an hour before, and he stands up, and he bowed. He was very gracious, and I thought that got over with me. And I thought, here's a guy, the pro wrestling. What that did was that made a gap between his business of being a pro wrestler and my enterprise, which is amateur wrestling. He was involved in that too. It gave him tremendous credibility with me, and so that made going to Florida even more of a no-brainer. If I'd have gone to Minnesota, Vern would have had me pulling the ring and refereeing for the first year. That's what he did with Jimmy Rashke. And Jimmy was twice the wrestler I was. Jimmy was third in the world in Greco-Roman in 1962, the first American that ever got any kind of medal in Greco-Roman wrestling and the Olympics or a World Game was Jimmy Rashke, the Baron, and he took third place at the World Games. And we went to work for Vern. Vern made him, Jimmy was, as you can tell, this is kind of a bone with me. Jimmy is the humblest, sweetest, nicest guy. He always has been. He is. He's just a good man. He's a sweet man. I've never heard him say a bad word about anybody. And he didn't need to. The guy's taken third in the world. What does he have to do to prove that he's worthy to be an amateur or a pro wrestler? It's not that being a pro wrestler is anything negative. It's just that he at least should have enough credibility to start training to be a pro wrestler right away. He doesn't need to be made humble, and it's humble enough. I mean, Jack went through years of not humble pie, but learning his trade. He was considered too small, right? He wasn't like a super heavyweight, and he had to pay his dues. But I don't think anybody made him pull the ring and be a referee and all that before they ever even got into training. Well, Jack was an NCAA champion.
Nick Goulas came close to it, though. Nick put Jack. Nick almost drove Jack out of the business. See, Jack was ready to park his car and go back to teaching and coaching.
Well, if they ask you to do that kind of thing, I don't blame it. I mean, because you do have a degree, and you can do other things, and why should you have to feel like you're being humiliated? Because it's a new business, and I mean, believe me, when I started, I was respectful and humble, and I wasn't going, I'm a big, because I didn't know how to work. So I forget about amateur wrestling. Yeah, I was good at that, but I'm not in amateur wrestling anymore. I'm in something new here. And so I'm right at the very bottom in the beginning. The fact that I had that background was a big help, because it got me up the ladder sooner, quicker. I mean, I didn't have to toil in the minors for 3 or 4 or 5 years. I started having main events after a year or two, or semi-mains, but I got a push, in other words. And so, but yeah, it was that run into Lars Anderson. I didn't do it myself. But what happened with Lars got into business and immediately became partners with Ole and Gene Anderson. Right. And that 6-man, you were there for him, Jerry, up there in the Carolinas, right, where he had, they had a lot of 3-man or 6-man tag matches. So he booked it right with 2 of the top guys in the territory, and he was making the same money they were. Well, no rookie starts out and makes, not back then. Now they might, but not back then. You didn't start out making $75,000 in 2 years and, and go to Australia, Japan and all that. Now, I got to do the Australia and the Japan part, but I think I went to Japan for $500 in 1970 or 69 or 1970 maybe. I think I got $500 a week, and I was glad to get it. I mean, that was fine. But okay, yes, one question. I talked for about 30 minutes.
Well, that's okay. That's the reason we got you on here. So you came down to Florida and you got hooked up with Eddie Graham. And the territory at that time had not really busted open. I mean, Florida was great for business, but it wasn't Florida that we became to know a little bit later on. And Eddie started stockpiling guys like you and Jack and myself and other guys, that Bobby Backlund came in, the guys that had that amateur background. Then he started recruiting his son here locally with Mike and Steve and Dickie and those guys there who had amateur background in high school. So the territory was kind of laid out for guys like you and me. And Eddie was the mastermind behind that. And he had that plan where he was going to build a legitimate territory based on the shooter mentality there. And he came as close to doing it, I think, as anybody because of guys like you.
But I don't want to go into it. I don't want to. You know what actually killed that was go. And this sounds cruel or nasty or whatever. But what actually killed that was going with Dusty, because that was completely different from what we were doing.
Yeah, and, well, if you follow Eddie's MO though, Eddie when Eddie came down there, he was one of those wild and woolly guys like that Dusty. So he had that rough and woolly territory for like years when he first took it over, I think, to kind of build the background and build a little cash pile. But as soon as he started getting these guys and he started getting into main control and full ownership of the company, he wanted a different mentality because, as you know, Eddie was so community minded, and so
yes,
he was out in the community all the time. So he started bringing in the college guys, and so he went from that blood gut from the 50s that him and Malenko and some of these other guys were into to guys like you and Jack and myself, where it was more collegiate, more no blood, very little blood, if there were any blood, but very little blood. And as soon as that Jack got the title and his reign kind of quit, Eddie went right back to what he knew with the Dusty and the blood guts mode then. So it was kind of a rolling pin type effect where, one style would go for a while, and then he would switch it over to another style. I think that's what kept Florida active like it was.
Well, you got a point there, because if you got a Broadway play, if it has a great run, that's fine, but you really can't change it, because it's the play. It's the death of a salesman or whatever. That's the play. You can't change it. So it runs its course. In wrestling, you have to keep going. So if your talent, you can change things. You can change your talent. You can keep the same talent, but you can change the style. So you made a good point there. But when I broke in, you're right. Eddie, a couple of years before I broke in, Eddie had been awarded the Professional Sportsman of the Year award from the Downtown Athletic Club. And guys that get that were like Wade Boggs and Dick Butkus, and people like that. And I'm not sure those were the people, but so the fact that a professional wrestler would get that kind of a legitimate, so-called legitimate award. And then also with that, I did a bunch of personal appearances. I was along for the ride, but we would speak to groups of, sometimes there'd be 500 or 600 people in an auditorium, and the local sports guys. There's three, I think. You would know how many major stations there are in Tampa, TV stations, but the guys that were the leading sports guys that told about the sports, they would be there, and they would say something. Eddie would talk, and they introduced me, and I would talk something. What was funny was Jack and I got into some esoteric type behavior. And Eddie was having me talk about drugs, about don't do drugs. uh, don't do whatever you do. You boys, you kids out there, you want to be an Olympian like me, don't do drugs. And I was thinking, well, geez, I hope I don't have anything in my pocket here. So anyway, no, did I feel like a hypocrite? No, because you had to hide it, man. Anything you did, I mean, you could drink like a maniac and walk in with a whiskey bottle stuck in your butt, whatever, but still, that was fine. But anything was right, especially with Eddie. But anyway, back to the point, he had serious credibility. He was, like I said, at that national, not national, but that state, the speaker or the not the speaker, but the main guy that came to present the awards for that tournament that I won my weight class at light heavyweight. The guy who came was the Secretary of State for the state of Michigan. So it wasn't like some little podinky thing, I mean, this guy was a heavy hitter. So that Eddie got, introduced and asked to, everybody gave him a big round of applause. In fact, 2 or 3 years after I got in the business, we hosted a national AU tournament at Fort Hammer Hesterly. Were you there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I wasn't here at that time, but yeah, it was a year before I came down. But yeah, they hosted that. Not only that, but he hosted an Olympic trial 1 year too.
Yeah. Well, the tournament, he asked me to help or to put it on. And I called my college wrestling coach, and he came down. He was the tournament ranger coordinator, and he called all the officials and got those people together, and we had the tournament right there at Fort Homer Hesterly Armory, and it didn't draw anything near what pro wrestling drew. Yeah. There might have been 100 people, maybe 200. It wasn't anything.
Well, wrestling wasn't even in the high schools, I don't think, at that time. Eddie funded the first high school state championship. I don't know if you're aware of that, but the first 3 or 4 state championships, Eddie actually funded, because the guys like Don Curtis and Coach John Heath were major coaches here in the state of Florida and brought the amateur wrestling down. So Eddie and Don and John all got together, and they started the Florida High School State Championship, and Eddie paid for them. 1 year it was over at HCC, and Jack and I were asked to go over there by Eddie and hand out the medals for the night. That's how respected that Eddie had become at that. Like you said, that award that he got, John, it's a who's who of Tampa professional athletes that's received this award. George Steinbrenner has received it. You can go on and on and on, guys like that. Anybody that had any affiliation with Tampa and sports and that was national, they'd make sure they got in. But Eddie received that award. That's when Eddie was stone cold sober at that time. Yeah. Also, yeah. What he would on his sobriety, and so, but yeah, he was quite a deal. But he also was very manipulative in the wrestling business, very well respected in that business. And when you came down here, did you go through the workouts with Matt Suter, or how was your training? Because we hear all these horror stories, and I wasn't here at the time when you came in. You were brand new, you were an Olympian and an All-American athlete come in. What method did Eddie use on you to get you trained?
I think Eddie saw me because he saw me wrestle up at that tournament. I'm not sure he thought I needed a whole lot of punishment of the story about Matsuda and Hulk Hogan or Terry Bollea. I don't even remember how it got arranged, but the way it worked out, Hero and I got together at Sportatorium, and I had met him. Cowboy was still around. I came to the office. I met everybody, but Hero and I hadn't even talked. He was very quiet. He and Duke Kiyamuka were very quiet, and around the office anyway. And but I don't remember how it got arranged. But Hero and I got together, and we got in the ring at the Snake Pit at the Armory there, and we started on our feet and we went, I was, after about a half hour, I started looking at the clock and we went another 15, 20 minutes, what estimated half hour. Now I was 260 at the time and Hero was 220, 215, 220. And I was a very good defensive wrestler, so he couldn't do anything with me. And I could take him down. I could muscle him a little bit, but also I had moved, you know, I mean, been wrestling for 13 years as an amateur. So we go 45 minutes on our feet. He wouldn't say anything, not a word. He wouldn't speak, you know, just go, you know, I take him down and you get back up. We didn't stay down. We get back on our feet. Well, after about 45 minutes, he said, the first thing after hello, the first thing he said to me was, you go down. This is the very first time. So I got down to referee's position. He got behind me in the top guy's position. And what he started, he dropped his knee on the back of my ankle.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't turned it, it would have, I don't know, it could have broken the ankle, sprained it, I'd broken it, might have ruptured my Achilles tendon, I don't know. But, you know, you're trained to react. You're an amateur, you're trained to react. You go against the pressure, you know, you go away from the pressure. You know, I just turned and, you know, so I didn't get hurt. But the fact that he did that, I reached up and I turned, I reached up and I grabbed him by the hair and I stuck my thumb right under his eye, like not in it, but right under it. And I didn't say anything, but I just stuck it there and I left it there and I had him.
Let him know.
Yeah, it's like if you wanna try to hurt me, you're gonna be looking at things a little different from now on. And so in a different way. And he immediately stopped. And then he started showing me hooks immediately.
Yeah.
He started showing me hooks. So that was it. I didn't
all it took was a thumb to the eye. And you were,
well,
now,
I mean,
if Hogan would have known that, he broke Hogan's leg, ankle the same way, driving that knee on his shin right on Hogan's Achilles and the ankle.
That's why I mentioned it, because when I heard that story, I said, "Huh, that sounds familiar."
That's the same thing he did to you.
Yeah,
but it didn't work on you.
Same thing, Jerry. Right? I mean, he had Hogan get down. He gets in top position, and that's how he broke his leg.
Exactly. Just
yeah.
Drive that leg down on the backside of that ankle, and you got him.
Well, you know, I'm not sure why Hero did that. Maybe he wanted to make sure those guys could.
Well, you know, Bob, I was there, and here's how it happened, and you know, I
hey,
know
Jerry, wait a minute. You were there when Hogan got his leg broke?
I was there. Yeah, I was there.
Really?
And he didn't get his leg.
I never knew that.
He never got it. He got hit. It was severely sprained. Sprained bad enough where he had to get it wrapped and go to the hospital. But it was the same exact move. Hogan, big guy, of course, and Hero was trying to move him around. Couldn't really move him around a lot. So Hero said, "You get down. You get down." Oh, and of course, Hogan had following directions. He got down, Matsuda, and Jack kind of elbowed. He said, "Watch this." And Hogan, when Hogan got down, Hero mounted him from the backside and dropped that leg right across the back of the ankle. And Hogan's kind of screamed, but to Hogan's credit, Hogan continued for a while until he couldn't get up on his ankle, until he couldn't walk. Then he rolled out of the ring, and we saw how big the ankle was, and we got him medical. I think Ed Leslie was there, and we got Eddie to take him to the local hospital down the Tappan General, right down the street from the office there. So that it wasn't broken. It wasn't where he reached back and wrenched on it or anything. It was just a simple move, just like he said he did to you.
Well, that's impressive that Terry or Hulk kept trying. You know, yeah, I think Hero. I'm trying to think mindset. Why would he do that? I think he wanted to make sure. I know that when he had Lex Luger. He made Luger run. He'd take the bike. He made Luger run miles and miles and miles. I'm not sure what he did with him in the ring, but he wanted to make sure that now Luger played football, so at least he knew physical contact. But I think he wanted to make sure these big guys could defend themselves, you know, and were salty enough that at least we're not gonna just give up and lay down and somebody got on them. You know, if somebody
Well, I
started.
think you hit it exactly. Matt Suda wanted to find out if this guy would defend herself, because you know yourself, and Don, you too, growing up in Texas, there's guys that are tough guys that they won't defend themselves, you know, and that was one of the things in our business here in Florida. You know, Eddie's real. You can go out and get in all the fights you want, but you better win the damn thing. So before they broke you in, they tested you a little bit to see if you had that intestinal fortitude to jump on somebody when somebody did you wrong. And
Right.
I think that was it, more than trying to show off, trying to hurt somebody. I think it was trying to see what you had inside of you, if you had the mentality to defend yourself and to take care of the business. So I never saw Hero get really aggressive without a reason behind it, you know, and I think he saw right away that you could go and would defend yourself and would result in the bodily harm if he pushed it any for. So now, brother, it's time to learn how to work, and man, work. Yeah. Did you learn how, man? That was great.
No, Hero was a great guy. Again, around the office, he was one person. I mean, a different person. He was quiet and, you know, he didn't say much. He was coming into Japan on a day that I was leaving. I had just finished a tour, and I met him. I ran into him at the airport, Narita Airport in Tokyo, and my plane got delayed. So I had to wait, I think, 6 or 7 hours. Hero and I sat in a bar and drank beer for 6 or 7 hours. And I mean, I probably had, I don't know, a dozen turkey, and Hero was keeping up with me. And what a guy. He was a raconteur. He had all kinds of great stories. He had a sense of humor, and completely different guy than, in fact, back when I saw him back in the office, you know, like 6 months later, 3 months before the next month, he wasn't like that guy I saw in Japan, my beer buddy. So, and then later on in my career, after Eddie was gone, Hero and Duke were running the territory, and I booked with them for a year. So I was up there in the office, and I always respected Hero.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't respect in fact, there were very few promoters I respected, but I respected Hero, and you know, he was
and Duke there too. So
yeah.
So Bobby, how long was it after you'd gone into the armory there and tried to get punished by Hero? How long was it before they actually put you in the ring against somebody, and who was it against? Who was your first working match?
I think it wasn't more than maybe a month or so. My first match was with Dick Dunn in Fort Myers. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of a funny story. I mean, I don't know if this our getting together is meant to have funny stories in it, but Dick Dunn and Don Carson were a tag team down there at the time, and I came down there to check out if I was going to get into business, and I rode with those guys to Jacksonville one night, just me, Don and Carson and me. And those guys ribbed me by not talking to me, and they didn't say one word to me, going and coming. What they did is they talked about amateur wrestlers, how all amateur wrestlers were just crappy guys. None of them ever made it in the business. They were just too stupid because they believed all that, you know, they had to be tough. And I was in the back seat, man. I was burning. I was hot.
You'd want to pull the damn car over and show them, right? We all went through the same thing.
Well, I should have figured. I mean, two of the top matches in Jacksonville at night was Jack in one and Dale Lewis in another. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, Dale two Olympic teams, and Jack national champion. Obviously, amateurs do make it in the business, you know. But I didn't see that, you know. I didn't recognize that at the time. Well, anyway, now here we are 2 months later, and I've got Dick Dunn, and
here we go.
In Fort Myers, they had that partition. They have a big room with, you know, it was an armory, so it was military. They had the big sliding, plastic metal, you know, plastic where you could slide the divider and cordon off those rooms, and they put the heels on one side and the baby face on the other. So I was so nervous. Duke came down with me. That's how they knew I was nervous. I was pacing. You know, I mean, before I went out to wrestle the Russian in the Olympics, I wasn't pacing. Now, I was nervous, but I wasn't pacing. I was so, and see, that's why you never would have this attitude. Because if you don't know how to work, you got to go out in the ring and produce, and there's nobody out there to help you. Now, the other guy will, and the referee will, if you've got a decent attitude. Otherwise, they might not help you either, and just get rid of you and make you look like crap, where you get fired immediately. But anyway, I'm pacing back and forth, and Carson decided he was going to play a rib on Dunn, and he called, I kept looking. I see the partition open, the Carson would be there, and I'd look, and all of a sudden Dunn would be there, and he'd be looking. And what I found out later, it was a couple of years later, I found out about it. What Don Carson was telling Dick Dunn was that, Dick, come here. Look at this guy, that 260-pound Olympian. He's gonna kill you. He remembers how you ribbed him. That was your idea to rib him on that trip to Jacksonville. He's gonna kill you. That's what he's telling Duke. I heard him tell Duke he's gonna kill you. So Don is going, oh my God, my life's over. I mean, I had a similar experience when I had to work with Dr. Steve Williams after I've been in the business 10 years. And believe me, I understand from Dick Dunn's point of view. But so when we went out there and when we got in the ring, I guess Dunn figured out I wasn't going to kill him. But when he came out, he and Joe Flaherty was the referee. And when I walked up to the ring, or out to the middle where the referee talks to you and all that, both of them were singing in a low voice, were singing, row, row, row your boat, row, row, row. And what they were trying to do was to calm me down, because I looked ready, even not wanting to at all. I looked ready to hurt somebody, maybe both of them.
Yeah, and they could tell. They could tell too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how nervous you were when you started, but I was. And that's why I always had respect for the business. It's not easy. You could be an Olympian. You can be an Olympian all you want. That doesn't mean you're going to be a good professional wrestler. You got to learn some stuff. And you got to learn some stuff that actually takes more talent than just using your body. And yeah, you learn. I mean, believe me, I have a lot of respect for both. But to not respect a top pro wrestler, you're looking at somebody who is, if they're natural and it just comes naturally, well, then they're to be admired. If it's somebody that developed that, which most amateurs did, then they should be respected for their work ethic. So yeah, I always had a lot of respect. Still
Bob, where were you in your career when that light went off and you said, I can really do this stuff. I can make myself a living doing this stuff. How long had you been dwelling on the preliminaries and those type matches where you had to prove yourself, where all of a sudden you didn't have to prove yourself anymore, but you had to prove yourself to the fans where you could draw the money?
I'd say about 5 years. Now, Ronnie Garvin always had a saying, it takes 10 years to really learn the business. And I asked him, we discussed with him in detail what he meant by that. And he said that you learn how to, not just to promote your, to what goes on in the ring. You also need to learn the office hold, how to promote yourself when you come into a territory or before you even come in, where you have an arrangement, you're going to be given a shot. They're going to look at you as a main event guy, or you're guaranteed a main event spot. You go into a spot. You are the second single heel, or the member of the tag team babyface or whatever, the top team, where you've got a position that's already there that they're going to get you over. They're going to try real hard, and you're going to make some money. But I got to the point where Eddie helped it a lot. And again, he was still sober, and he had me work in the office. And you did this too. I think that's one of our commonalities, that I feel closer to you than I do to a lot of the guys, because you saw what it takes to get a show out there actually produced, and a guy to go have a match, and all he's done. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not putting anybody down. I sometimes wish I had just done it that way, but to have guy goes, drives to the matches. He gets in the ring and has his match and goes home. Well, for him to be able to do that, all that went into that, you know how much work that was. To be able to do that was, I mean, all in the office, coming up with the televisions, getting a promotion. I mean, all the things that went into that. And, by learning that part of it, seeing what went on behind the scene, it gave me a real jump. When I went to California, Shires had done the same thing for about 15 years. And the first 10 years it worked, or maybe even the 12 years, but he kept the same guys too. He kept Pat Patterson, Ray Stevens, and after 10 years, I mean, if you can stay in one place for 10 years and still draw, that's great. But he kept using the same finishes and styles and everything. So when we went out there, I was going to the ring, and now I'm coming from where Eddie Graham from we're trying to convince everybody this is a shoot here in Florida. So I'm going to the ring, and people are telling me, the fans are telling me, and there's not that many of them, like at the Cow Palace, are telling me that they know what I'm going to do. You're in a tag match. You're going to go out there. You guys are going to get DQ'd in the first round, and then the second round, they're going to beat you, and then the third round, they're going to try to almost beat you, and then you're going to screw them. And they were right. Well, I mean, to me, that was embarrassing, because what we do, if you can't suspend disbelief, what we do is ridiculous. Think about it. If everybody is just looking at you going, ha, I know you guys are full of crap. I know, look at that guy. You see what he do? He fell down. Well, I mean, it is. But when you got people involved, then yeah, what you're doing has real significance. So after a month of just feeling embarrassed, I went to give my notice, and Roy asked me if I wanted to be the booker. And I said, yeah. And I've been in the business about 6 years. And so maybe 7. But again, I'd helped out in the office in Florida quite a bit. And I had booked towns. So, I mean, I'd at least help book towns, and I'd run towns. So and plus coming from Florida with Eddie,
Right.
I had great brain. I had all kinds, all the angles I saw. Eddie always insisted, especially in Tampa, would actually walk me out and say, watch these matches. Him, Jack and Johnny Valentine. Watch this match, Bob. And I wanted to anyway. And Sam Steamboat was another one. He's telling me when I first started, watch every match you can, Bob. Don't go home. You're on first or second because you're just starting. Stay and watch the matches. That's the way you'll learn. So if you see stuff you like, then go ahead and you can try it yourself. But watch the matches. It's a great way to learn. Well, that was, and I did that, it made good sense to me. So now Roy didn't want a booker. He wanted somebody to carry his finishes. And I was supposed to pick him up and take him to someplace, and I was supposed to meet him and get a tape recorder with his finishes on it, and somehow I didn't show up. And when he got mad at me because he had to drive all the way to Fresno, about 250 miles in an old truck, where I was supposed to meet him in San Francisco and drive him there. And when he got there, he was all hot. He never cussed around me. He didn't ever cuss me. But where were you? And I said, man, I said, Roy, man, I couldn't find you. I said, well, I got a show to run, so talk about it later. Well, I wasn't lying. I couldn't find him because I didn't try. I didn't look for him. I knew where he was. I didn't go anywhere near it.
He didn't drive through.
Well, he kept wanting to run. He kept wanting to run it his way. But what happened was, by the second Cow Palace show, our business doubled. It wasn't me being a genius. It was just doing something different. I started using Florida stuff, solid stuff, and some gimmick stuff. You had, we have girls and midgets, or, guy had a gimmick, you could have, but we would help, start that first match being solid, and a lot of wrestling, and then have, just I had learned enough in Florida and I had good talent too. So anyway, I have it's a tragedy what happened with Eddie Graham, because Jack, me, Dusty, I don't know how many other guys, you to some extent maybe, that he got started that all ended up leaving it, and it's just a shame, because it would have been nice if that, life worked out like a Hallmark greeting card, we could have all, in our old age, when if Eddie was still alive, could have gone, and like, had a party for him or something. But anyway, that's the way it goes sometimes.
Bob, then from California, you headed back to Florida. Was that the trip? Or when did you get into the deal with Steve? That's what I want to get to next, because I was telling John a little bit earlier there. Probably one of the greatest angles ever in the history of Florida involved you, Bob, and Steve Kern, and Steve's dad, who was like the longest POW in 2 wars ever, and you being the All-American boy, and Kern kind of lead us into that, and with your story, how did that get rolling, and man, the results are history though.
Well, it wasn't right away. When I came back to Florida from California, you were there. You were, I think, co-booker, and they put the belt on me, but
with Valentine, I was co-booker with Valentine.
Yeah, and that was stupid, but Cyrus came back from the NWA meeting at the middle of about 3 or 4 months after I started booking his territory, and he wanted control back. So he got me in a room with TV one day. He got me alone, and he said, I talked to Eddie Graham at the convention, and he told me that you weren't an assistant booker for him. He said you were just a coffee character. You didn't really, you carried coffee for him. You didn't do any booking or anything. And I got hot, and I should have realized that Eddie did say that, then he was riveting. And but I was young and naive in that sense, and I got hot. And when I came back to Florida, when I saw Eddie, I still had he was friendly, big smile and all that. And he had me still stay sober, but I just I was carrying a kind of a grudge, I guess. And plus, I had been there for a lot, big part of my career. I wanted to go out and try some other places, and I got a chance to go to Knoxville from there. So now Kern was before California. Kern, I believe, was in the middle 70s. I went to California in 77. Yeah. In fact, I remember, because we were both young and undercard guys. Steve came up with the idea. He approached me at, I think, maybe at TV or maybe in a dressing room, but he came up with the idea, and it sounded great to me. I mean, I wasn't hugely ambitious about getting on top, but I enjoyed the business, just being in any part of it. But it sounded like a great angle, and so I insisted on talking to his father first, and I wanted to make sure it was okay with him. My dad was almost captured and killed in World War II, and he was awarded the Bronze Star for valor leading his men through enemy lines. He was a captain of an artillery group that got surrounded, and my dad never would talk about it, and it created some problems for him. And so, Colonel Kern, having been a POW for all those years, I wanted to make sure that, I knew that Steve wouldn't do it without his okay, but I wanted to assess the situation. So anyway, Steve got me together with his dad, and he talked to me. He just said, basically, he said, Bob, after what I've been through, he said, I don't care what you guys do. If Steve can help, you guys, if it helps my son make some money or help his career, go ahead and do it. Well, I had enough experience to know that this was the once in a lifetime And it was. I never did anything like that. Even when I did with Sullivan being one of his crazy guys, and male thing with half my head shaved was nothing near, because the thing was, Kern's dad was dead serious.
Heat.
You talk about
Legit.
serious. What do they call it? Dead heat, not dead heat.
White hot heat, bro.
Yes, yes. And what I did, I went home the night before we were going to do the ankle, and I practiced. I did after the Masters in Tampa.
Did you think in your mind that it was going to be that hot of
No.
a deal?
No, I had no idea. I'd never done anything to get that much heat. I'd never done anything that serious. But I practiced. I knew we had 2 minutes. You had 2-minute interview. I practiced what I was going to say, and I thought I didn't have to write it out, but I thought about it. I'd been in the service. The first rule of military conduct is that I will not be captured by the enemy. The second is, if I am captured, I'll make every effort to get away or to escape. So those are the code of military conduct, 1 and 2. So I used those because his dad had been captured, and what they did. Eddie later said that he didn't go along with it, but no, he did, because he and Steve were on earlier in the show, and they were talking about Eddie being like a father figure for Steve when his dad was in the prisoner of war camp, and that and then they showed the film of Steve's dad getting off the plane, and Steve was supposed to wait for him over here, and Steve could, when he saw him, he took off running.
Right.
And and Walter Cronkite, the father at the time, was the father of the American. He was the one that talked about the war all the time. He was the people. He had probably 80% of the news watchers were watching him, because he told about the war and he told the truth. And so Walter Cronkite's doing the voiceover of Steve running out to meet his dad. And you're talking about dead serious, something that credibility. Yeah. This is credible. This is real. This isn't some made up baloney. So, when I came out later, I don't know, 10, 12 minutes later, I had another match or something on. I just said, I told those 2 law of military conduct, and Steve Kern's out here, and he's talking about his dad being a hero, and Eddie Graham's talking about his dad being a hero. Then I said the 2 things. Well, first of all, number 1, I will not be captured. Number 2, if I am captured, I will make every attempt to escape from the enemy. Now, what you might not have known was Colonel Kern had also been shot down and captured in World War II.
Right.
So twice, this man had given everything for his country. I mean, give up your freedom. People torture you. You're giving up a lot. So I get tears just thinking about it. But so I said, now this guy, not only got captured in Vietnam, he got captured another time, and neither one of those did he ever get away. So he broke the first rule of military conduct twice. He broke the second one twice. I don't know how you can say a man like this is a hero. To me, he's not a hero. He's a coward.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. John, this is the hometown of Special Forces. MacDill Air Force Base is one of the biggest military installations in the entire United States, and top secret things, and heroes walking around on every corner, right, Bob?
Yeah, and not only that, wounded warriors there who are recovering, who are maybe amputated. They're at the hospital, they're recovering, they're walking around. My girlfriend worked at MacDill Air Force Base at the PX, or at the commissary, or the beer hall, whatever it's called. And she was serving she came home that night and said, "What did you do?" She said, I was listening to these guys, they're talking at a table. They're talking about finding out where you live. We live, because we're living together. Yeah. She said, they're going to find out where he lived. They're going to put they said it was a tank grenade. It's one of those things that a tank runs over, it blows the tank up in the air. They're going to take one of those things and shove it through our living room window. I went, oh my God. Well, that was later. As soon as Steve came running out, and he came running out. And what happened? Now, he tells it different. Well, I was watching it. When he ran by the camera, I don't know if you remember the camera there, at the bottom of it had a big it had a ring at the bottom that was,
Yeah.
say, 3 feet across.
Right.
That was if the camera got tipped,
Yeah.
it wouldn't go over.
Yeah, it had that big big ring around. Yeah.
That ring would hit the floor and and to give the cameraman time to grab it, in case somebody ran into it or something, because, we're out there, close people running around, big guys. Well, Steve hit his ankle, was running right close to the camera as he could. He hit his ankle on that thing, and it made him, what he had to do, he wasn't sure he could walk, so he just dove. He hit that desk and hit me, and slowly scooted out of there. And so we're both down behind the desk, and Steve, you can see his arms raising, and I'm throwing pencils and stuff in the air. And so Orton Jr. and Senior came out. Bobby and I were partners, and Senior was in the territory too. They came out and pulled me out of there, and Steve got up. Now, if he'd gotten up and made an interview where he was red hot, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as effective. He got up, and because he thought he broke his ankle, it was killing him. Now, he might disagree. He might say he doesn't remember it the way I do, but that's fine. What I remember is he got up, and I attributed it to the ankle, because he was not crying, but he was trying to like stifle tears, and he, in a choked voice, and he was fighting the pain. He said, "Roop, my father suffered enough. Don't pick on him, pick on me." And I got back into the inner office with a monitor about the time he was saying that. Jim Barnett and Jody Hamilton. Jody was a booker, and Jody turned around and said, "Bobby," he said, if you don't have firearms," he said, "you better get you some." I would get a couple of them if I were you. And I did. I got a shotgun and a 357 Magnum pistol the next day. Barnett's walking up and down going, "Oh my God, Bobby, what have you done? Oh my God, Bobby, what have you done?" That's when the flash bulb went off, and I said, "Uh-oh. I wonder if maybe I've gone too far here." And it was. I mean, I had people pointing guns at me and threats, all kinds of death threats. And I, later on, I apologized before I left the territory. I apologized to Colonel Kern, but yeah, it was hot. You know what? That was so hot. What they did is that Dusty was booked on top for the matches. Like everything's booked 2 weeks ahead.
Right.
That's why.
Yeah.
So those matches that were so hot was they changed the cards starting as soon as that TV played, and they added a lights out match of me and Kern.
Right.
They added it to the card because they didn't know it was going to be that hot, and they added it to the card, and so we went and our matches lasted 3 or 4 minutes because Steve would go down there first. If I went there first, yeah, I went first a few times, but in fact, let me think. I probably went first every time because
for Steve to make the run in and
yes,
get you.
Yeah, I would go first. You're right, because if he went first, why would I even get the rank?
Yeah.
So yeah,
you wouldn't go down there. But John, what they used to do down here in Florida, and Bob will back me up on this, if there was an angle that just got smoking hot overnight, and sometimes we ran those TV angles where it wasn't supposed to be the main angle, but all of a sudden, man, this has got all the attention. Well, they would do an unsanctioned match, thus the lights out match, because the signifying of the lights going out, the event is over. Now we're going to have this fight, and these guys go down there uncontrollable, unpart of the National Wrestling Alliance code of conduct type deal, where the guys were open to do anything. It was wild.
Yeah, it's like no rules. And but again, you're the typical scenario where I would get in there and he would be, I would run from him, but I would run from him enough until where he would get careless. I was in good enough shape that I could move quickly. And I got around, and I would duck out of the ropes and go around and roll in the ring, and he'd roll in after me. Well, as he rolled in, I'd drop a knee on it, or hit him with a knee or something to the side, and I'd pick him up and like I would start to pound him, well, he would, I'd have him come back right away. I mean, he'd shake it off and then he'd just kick the crap out of me. I'd take off again and maybe try again. The second time he'd come in, I'd drop an elbow on him and I tried again and he kicked the, one time I got it from on my shoulder. He grabbed my tights and from up on my shoulder to give him the shoulder breaker. He's pounding me on the gut, on the chest. I had to drop him. I sat down. He got up and started kicking the crap out of me. Well, I ended up, what I would do, of course, I'd leave. You know, I'd take off and go back to the dressing room. Well, of course, then you went into, you know, lumberjack matches and cage matches and all that. And it didn't last long. I think we could have we could have made that last a long time, but Dusty's thing had to be had
to be on top.
Well, yeah, and I understand that. Dusty was also a once in a lifetime type talent, you know, or once in a generation. He was exceptional. I mean, the guy drew.
So Bobby, you had that great angle here, and we all agree, man. We could have bled that for a heck of a lot more, you know, than what we did for. But you got out of that, then you headed up north to Tennessee, or into Tennessee.
Hey, Jerry, real quick before you go, I got to ask you, Bob. Everybody's been down to Florida. You were there during some periods of sobriety with Eddie Graham. But there are the periods where he was drinking. Do you have any stories with Eddie? Because nearly everybody's been on here has a story with Eddie on the plane drinking.
I heard a couple of those. In fact, Kern told me a couple.
I think Eddie was still in a sober stage when you were here.
Yeah, but I did come in. I did come through there when he had started drinking again, and we worked in Orlando. And he came to the ring. You could tell he wasn't staggering, but you could tell he was wobbly a little, and he was flushed, and his hair was kind of messed up, and you could tell he'd been, you know, he wasn't. And I knew I'd been told that he was back on the bottle, but he hit me. He hit me a punch and knocked my teeth through my lip. And I only let him on. And that was the last punch he gave me because I took a bump out of the ring. And whatever we were going to do, we did it. And afterwards, I went by the dressing room, and it was strange. He came up and he put his hand on my arm. He reached up and kissed me on the cheek, and he says, "Good to see you, Bobby," or something like that. And I mean, I wasn't gonna say anything to him anyway. I mean, I wasn't gonna cuss him out or anything. It's just that I went by that. I probably was going to thank him for the match, you know, because that was just protocol. You thank somebody you worked with. But yeah, that was sad. You know, I felt, you know, the guy, man, when that guy was at the top of his powers.
Ooh, there's nobody better in the bed. But so you escaped most of the flights where he was inebriated, and that's a good thing because we all have our horror stories with Eddie behind the wheel. But you know what? We trusted the man so much we kept getting on that airplane with him.
Yeah, well, Lester Welch had a plane down there at Twin Beach.
Yeah,
we flew to San Juan, and you know the heels got to go commercial. Babyface had to ride with Lester.
Yeah,
it was like an 8.5 hour, 9 hour trip.
That was a miserable trip in that old.
No bathroom. Yeah. I mean, it was horrible. And so one time we're halfway across, we're over water, and we got another 3 or 4 hours over water, and one engine, it doesn't go out, but he has to shut it down because it's overheating. So the other one started over to get hot because it was doing all the work. So we had to stop it. There was an Air Force base on a U.S. base on Puerto Rico, and you're not allowed to land a civilian plane there. But Lester said he was coming in because he was either that or he was going to crash. He wasn't going to make it to the big airport down in San Juan. So we landed at that base, and he needed to get some oil. The other engine was out of oil. It was leaking oil. That's why the other engine got hot. So we got to the show that night at the show started at 8:30. We got there at 10:15. Cyclone Negro had gone 45 minutes with J.C. Dykes. I would give anything to see that match.
Me too, yeah.
But that would have been the greatest talent. Cyclone was a great worker. But what great talent to be able to go 45 minutes with a manager who I never saw J.C. Russell. Maybe he did. Maybe he might have been a wrestler before, or maybe he did. But anyway, we went ahead and had the show. They weren't, you never give the money back if you don't have to. And we did the show, and to go home or to fly back to the States, we island hopped. We waited till dawn the next day, and then we'd go fly 2 or 3 hours, went by the Caicos Islands to get back to, and it was nice in a way. We stopped in South Caicos and took a couple hours for the plane to cool off. So Danny Miller and I went out and doing we went snorkeling with this local guy. And that's another funny story. We were snorkeling, having a good time. We flew, the water was about 12 feet deep, and we were snorkeled around this big, I don't know what it's called, but looks like a great big cabbage. It's just a coral, looks like a cabbage about 6 or 8 feet high. And I went around one side, and Danny was going around the other. And on the other side of it was a barracuda. It was about, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet long, and it wasn't doing anything. And I knew about barracudas. It's dangerous if you got flashy items on that they think might be a fish or a scale, or if you're bleeding. But so, I saw the barracuda, and I thought, wow, Danny probably enjoys seeing that barracuda. And I kept waiting for Danny to swim around the other side of and he didn't. So I turned around and I went back to where his side, he wasn't there either. So I stuck my head out of the water. Now we were about 50 yards from the boat. By the time I stuck my head out of the water, Danny was sitting in a boat. He's leaned over. He's got a cigarette lit. He's got his arms crossed. He's going, "No way, no way." he wasn't going to stay in the water with that barracuda. But well, 2 weeks later, we had to go. Lester was going to get the plane fixed. 2 weeks later, there's another high spot. Orton Sr. was on the plane that first time, and he spent about 2 hours saying, tomorrow at this time we're all going to be shark shit, which is really nice to hear. It's really good for the confidence. Well, 2 weeks later we're supposed to go again, and Lester's supposed to get the plane fixed. When we get halfway there, you got to shut the engine down again. And that time we had a rebellion. Even Danny was he was used to the business, and I mean, he said, "No way." He said, "This is too dangerous." But that's the only story we have. Nothing like what Eddie was doing. That stuff. Kern told a story that, it was pretty scary. Did he tell a story at that Vice taping?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We kind of shared stories with it.
Yeah, that's right.
Well had the scary stories, and they were. But you know what? We still had trust in the man. It's we all make those mistakes, but he never crashed. So
Yeah, people. I mean, how many?
My buddy Cole didn't take a drink when he flew, and he crashed 2 of them.
Well, think about how many wrestlers drive drunk.
Exactly.
Every wrestler I knew was buying at least a 6-pack of beer on the way back to home or to the next town. And I don't know, maybe a wrestler could drink a 6-pack of beer.
You had to hydrate yourself, Bob. I mean, it was hot.
Of course.
It was hot.
Yes, of course. That's my story
and
too.
John getting on those damn airplanes after they'd set out in that sunshine, for like 4 hours while you're at the event, come back inside those airplanes were 160.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You had to get up in the air before the air could start circulating. You could feel some fresh air coming in. It was brutal travel. I mean, we got home quick and we got to the arena quick, but it was still brutal traveling, flying. Everybody, oh man, you must have been nice. You flew everywhere, but we don't go into all the horror stories.
No.
The planes catching on fire, the equipment breaking in midair, and then
Yeah. Well, those are barnstorming days. I was an era that's gone now. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there'll be some way.
Now John flies in those Gulf Streams.
Yeah. That's what I do. Yeah.
He just came back from Bermuda in one of those big Gulf Streams.
Yeah, that's what
he rented out because he was.
That's nice.
Hard to set in the sunset. So anyway, Bob, when we get to Tennessee now, And what you're working for Fuller up in Knoxville area, or
Yeah.
how does that go?
Ron Fuller, well, it didn't go real, it went good for a while, but we did the unspeakable. We went opposition to Ron, and it wasn't out of
Bob, I know where you're going on this. I'm gonna jump in here and kind of explain it to John. And there was a deal, a Plan B. Now, Ron Fuller had the reputation of being a very legit businessman, right, and paying off real good. What happened there where things went askew with you and Ronnie? Because Ronnie was really looking at you to help him out there, right?
Well, territory was going so good. Ron actually left and went down to Robert was booking Pensacola, yeah, and Ron went down there to work. So we're doing great business. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, sellouts every night," but we were doing great business. Garvin was over like crazy. Orton and I were a great tag team. We had Malenko and Garvin had these great matches. And I had Malenko and Garvin. We lived in an apartment complex together, which we'd get together every week, and I was a booker, but those guys had they'd forgotten more, and I had learned yet. And so the three of us would Malenko and I would get things together when we'd run, because Bonnie couldn't run with us because he was a baby face, but the three of us to get together, and we'd come up with TVs that we had a girls in a box. We thought it was a bear or Andre the Giant. We had all these things, but at the bottom, at the very center of it, was the matches were great. We didn't have gimmicks and then no wrestling. The matches, Ronnie, we'd have stuff that was so, suspense that people thought Andre the Giant was in this big carrying box. It was actually because it was what it was at, weighed over 500 pounds. Well, it was 4 girls. They looked like just regular girls. 2 of them were lady wrestlers. Joyce Grable was one of them, but they didn't know her there. And they were all dolled up and looked, we had their hair done. And they came out, they brought the box down to ringside. Malenko's there in the ring with he's got a bat with a nail in it, a chain around his neck and brass knucks. But he's expecting Andre the Giant to get out of the box. And she's 4 girls. Well, they get out and they get in the ring, and they're like the Japanese girls when you go there. They had flowers. We bought these bouquets of flowers. They present Larry or Boris with the flowers, and he gradually, he's not going to hit the girls, so they gradually they're rubbing his feelings, arms, muscles, and patting it, keep hugging him, and eventually they get the bat away from him, they get the chain away from him, they get the knucks away from him. And they're going to take a picture with him, and all 4 of the girls are like hugging him. And as soon as they flash the picture, where the flash goes off, they attack him, and they grab his hair, they trip him down, and the girls take off their high heels, and they start whacking him with high heels. Well, he busted up out of there, and the crowd went nuts because they didn't know it was going to happen. And as soon as he busted out of there, we had the first 3 girls almost out of the ring, and by the time Larry got there, we had Joyce be late. She was the last one to get out. Larry caught her as she was going through this over the second rope to get out, and he pulled her up and he smacked her. He punched her, took a hell of a bump out onto the floor. He had all his heat back, and then him and Ronnie Garvin had a 45-minute match. You could sell anywhere in the world as one of the best matches you ever saw, or among your top 50. And so that's a big cake with a great big bunch of icing on it, and some ice cream too, with that girls and all that, because we kept fooling them. The fans didn't know what was going to happen. So the only reason I'm going into detail about this is that we worked hard. We all contributed to have business going great. I had a commission. I had a percentage as a booker of the house shows. And in Harlan, Kentucky one night, Ron Wright, who had been up there for 25 years working that territory for 3 or 4 different promoters, called me aside. He said, "Come out here, Bob, I want to show you something." And so he showed me, he said, you see this house here? He said it was full. He couldn't get anybody else in there. It ended up that way. And he said, there's still a few people coming in. I want you to watch something. So I was watching, what he had me watch was a ticket taker and a ticket seller. And what happened was that the ticket taker was a mother and a daughter. The ticket taker would take the ticket, and one, she could rip the ticket and give it back and put the other one in a style there. And then about every fourth one, she didn't hand it back. And then after, when it'd be a lull, she'd go up, mom would be sitting about 10 feet in front of her, selling the tickets at a table. And she'd lean over the table and put her hand on the table. And when she put her hand up, when she lifted her hand up, her mom put her hand on the table. And then I'm watching this. She kept watching. He said, Ron said, watch your hands. And mom takes something and puts it over, and it's tickets. They're reselling tickets. Now I went to another show and I watched it again from the beginning, and I saw it was happening. So I went to Ron and I said, Ron, I don't care how you do business is your affair, but I'm being paid on a commission, and I want you to pay me on what the actual gates are. And he said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, well, if you don't, I said, you have two ticket takers or ticket mom and daughter that are stealing money from you because they're double selling tickets. I said, I've seen this before, and I've seen them do it. Oh, no, they wouldn't. Now, Ron, while he's doing this, I'm sorry, your friend or whatever, he's knocked me on this podcast about 18 times, so I guess I can at least say something back. This is what happened. And when he's talking to me, he won't look at me. He's walking away from me. Oh, I can't believe it. Back to me. And so I waited till the next show. I watched again. Happened again. I went to him again, and he said, oh, no, I can't believe it. No, it can't be. So I went back to Ronnie Garvin was at his apartment. I went to his apartment. I think Larry was there. And I said, I'm going to give my notice. I said, you can only get sold from if you allow yourself to be. I said, I can work anywhere in the country. I said, I'm going to give my notice and go and leave. And Garvin said, why don't we take it? I said, what, the territory? He said, yeah. So that's what happened. And we made a try. Again, you're not supposed to do that, but what I tried to do was we tried before to get a union. Wrestlers need a union. Baseball had it, football had it, and those guys' salaries went from, let's put it this way, before the union, Mickey Mantle, the best year he had, the most money he made in 1 year, I think that year he had 52 home runs. After the union, Roger Clemens made as much pitching one game as Mickey Mantle made in that entire year. That was due to the union. So I wanted to start a union. I went down to Tampa and I took Slater with me. And we went to the Siemens International Union, which was SIU. That's where I went to school, Southern Illinois University. So it was like
the lookies.
Yeah, and the guy, he said, yeah. He said, you want to apply for a union? Yeah, sure. He said, here in Knoxville, he said, the Knoxville River, he said, we have union people here. Anything that has to do with water, if you want to have a strike, we'll have people, in our union, we'll shut down too. And that way we can support you. Well, Slater went to that meeting with me. And immediately after I left, he went over and told Graham what we were doing. So I went back to Knoxville, and Ron, by that time, everybody knew. Now, I'm going to tell you why the plan B. Eddie Graham called me, and he said, well, Bob, he said, you're not going to have, you worry about this, you got to worry about that. And what happened was that, and I don't blame him. I mean, that kind of move was disaster for all of them. But Eddie, Jim Crockett, over to Tennessee. I don't know if it was who in Tennessee, but all the surrounding territories were the promoters were sending talent into Knoxville to run against us. So Plan B was a way to fight back. The reason we made that, it was Ron Wright's idea. He had the studio. The reason to make that was because it was to be used as a threat because we didn't have anything else. There was no way we could fight these guys. So it was meant to be a threat. It was never meant to be. I was gobsmacked when I saw the thing on YouTube, wherever it was, YouTube or whatever. I couldn't believe it because I thought that was 25, 30 years ago.
Where did you guys make the tape? In Ron Wright's?
At some studio that he had up there in Johnson City.
Did you just make the one, or is
yes? Yeah, that was it. And it was what it was going to be a threat that, if you guys don't give us a break, we're going to expose the business. And again,
how was you guys going to use the tape? I mean, I know they expose the business, but how was you going to get airplay through the local? Just go to, hey, we got an expose here, or what was the mindset there?
Had not thought that far ahead.
Did you ever show it to anybody?
As far as I know, Ron kept it that night. I never saw it again until it showed up. And I've seen some people, comments that say, I should be, crucified for exposing the business and all that. But I lost $200,000 trying to go opposition. And by the time I left there, I was broke. And again, maybe, you can look back and say, a bad decision. But if it had worked, you're talking about a multi-million-dollar a year business. And there were no rules. Nobody owned anything. Right. Nobody ran it. It's not like a football franchise where, there's a league that says, yeah, so-and-so owns the New York Giants. And, if you try to say you're the New York Giants, you're going to be arrested. So we gave it a try. The union thing was something I was really interested in doing. I mean, I didn't want to be part of the union per se, but just to have some representation. Promoters could do whatever they wanted with payoffs and how they treated you and, blackballing guys and all that. And I just didn't like that. I didn't. Now, I sometimes wish I had taken Jerry's route, which was to overcome. And, I'm full of admiration because Jerry stayed in the business and rose to the top and stayed on the top rank of earning for his whole career and still doing it. And so I think about that sometimes. But the main reason I ended up retiring was I had a family. I had a son that I decided I wasn't going to be on the road anymore. I lost my oldest boy when I got married. I mean, when I started a business, my wife couldn't handle it, and we ended up splitting up. So I wasn't much of a father to my first son, and I decided I wasn't going to do that again. So I went ahead and retired. So I had a career of about 15 years active, but that was straight. That was 355 days a year, and it was, it was
now the guys that you had with you, they were all really established. Malenko, like you said, Wright was probably the least, but in Tennessee, Ron Wright and his family were legends in Tennessee. Plus, you had Bobby Orton Jr. and Ronnie Garvin, a guy who would go on and become an NWA heavyweight champion of the world.
Right.
And so, how was the approach? Were they all in the car with you when you guys came up with this and one of those wrestler things? Everybody agrees to do it.
Well, we were, again, like I say, we were at Ronnie's apartment, and Malenko and Ronnie and I agreed, and then Bobby lived in that apartment complex too. And I called him down, he agreed. And Slater was, I think, staying with me, and we talked to him. I thought I could trust him, and he agreed. But so yeah, the thing is, see, we Babes in the Woods. If we were going to do that, we should have tried to make sure we could get a television first. And by not doing that, we doomed ourselves, because without TV, and with Fuller having TV and all these other TVs coming in. Have you got something in front of you, or do I? I'm seeing something on my screen. I'm curious if I put something on.
Why
here.
we can't see
Oh no,
anything
it's your chair. It's your chair. Okay, I see what it is. I
Hey,
lost.
Bob. Hey, Bob, it seems like a really ingenious idea. You've got no leverage. You got all the promoters that are working against you, so you really have no strength. But you've got this nuclear bomb in this video that you put in your back pocket. Did you ever threaten one of the promoters? I mean, the whole idea was you had the threat to never use it, I believe is my understanding. Did you ever tell one of the promoters you had this, or show it to them in order to try to get some leverage, or did you just make the tape and forget about it?
We made the tape. Again, Ron Wright was the one that came up with it. Because I had been the booker, a lot of people thought I was like the leader of this cabal or whatever, but that wasn't the case. But Michael and Ronnie had been in the business 10 years by the time I broke in, and Larry had been in the business 20 years by the time or maybe more by the time I broke in. So these guys were veterans. I mean, and I was no longer the booker per se, because we didn't have any matches yet. But no, there were no plans to show it to anybody. And what happened, while we were running shows and we were drawing some money, we were drawing just on name recognition. We were drawing, but eventually we ran out of money, and Larry's mother or his wife, I'm not sure what, he had a family problem where he had to leave and come back to Tampa. And Bobby had a family to support, so he had a new child, and he ran out of money, and so he left and went out to Wasatch territory, and eventually, I ran out of money, and so I had to go too, and I went over to Bill Watts territory for a year.
Now, was there any of this held against you when you went? Because we know how Bill is. He was stickler for the business and taking care of the business. Did the subject ever come up? Were you ever penalized, or any of you guys ever? Hey, what were you guys thinking?
No, I didn't hear a word.
How common knowledge was it that you had this in your back pocket?
Oh, I don't know if anybody. I don't think anybody knew.
Nobody.
Just us.
Bob, this is fascinating to me. When I saw this today, I thought this is incredible history. This is the old wrestling business of all the promoters. You've got no leverage. You stick this nuclear bomb in your back pocket. Did none of the promoters ever know about it? I mean, you made the tape, but did you never use it or use the threat of it or anything, and then it just disappeared until it showed up again a couple of years ago?
Yeah, because here's the deal. Bobby went back to work. Ronnie stayed there for another year. I brought him out of there and brought him to work over in Atlanta when I started working with Ole Anderson over there and helping him book the territory. We brought Ronnie in he was still with the Poppos. What happened is he got together with Randy Poppo and Lanny and old man Angelo Poppo. I can't remember the name of their promotion, but we went to work for them for a while. And we worked with them, and we had a percentage. We got paid so much, but we were put part of our money in the stock in the company every week. And but eventually it just got old, and I was still in my prime. So I figured, why not go ahead? And the only thing Bill Watts said to me to answer Jerry's question was that I wasted a year, and he was right, because I could have maybe in Mid-South in that year, I could have probably made $75,000 instead of losing $100,000. So yeah, he had a point. And you don't get those years back.
Yeah.
When you get old, that year's gone.
You are still really respected in the business. Did any of those thoughts come in? Hey, what's going to happen? This thing was there ever any? If this thing backfires on us, what are we going to do? Because there's 5 awesome talents. There are 5 world-class talents there in that video.
Well, you know as well as I do that if a promoter can make money with you, they'll use you. Somebody will.
Yeah, somebody will.
Somebody will.
If
And
you can
then,
draw money, they're going to book you.
yes, they can make money.
Yeah.
You know, that guy that murdered the doctor who was in a hospital in prison. He got out. I can't remember his name. He murdered his wife or something. He got out. They booked him. I mean, there's no moral high ground. There's a lot of low ground, but there's no moral high ground. And I don't mean to knock the business, but I think it's to make money.
So the talent really never even brought it up because it wasn't well known that it was out there. But there was buzzes around, rumors around it that you guys had made a tape, but nobody ever had evidence of it or anything.
No. Well, let me tell you
how that thing kept under wraps for all these years is amazing wrestling story in itself, because nothing in this business kept suppressed for that long.
Right. In fact, I'd like to be able to trace it back to how it arose, how it came into being seen. But just a story about the talents per se. And one of the reasons I want to start a union, when we were opposition, we were traveling to a town and we pulled into a gas station to get gas or get a drink or something. And there was a carload of the boys who were working for, I guess, Fuller, who were there too. And Carl Cox was there with them. Now, Carl and I were friends, and I love the guy to this day. And those guys, the other guys in the car, were guys, all guys that I knew. Not one of them would even speak to or even look at us, would not even look at any of us. And it wasn't some high dungeon from a point of view of like, you guys are beneath contempt. It was some attitude, I'm afraid to talk to you because you guys are going to be blackballed and I don't want to be blackballed too. That's what it was. And Carl said that. Carl said, Bob, these chicken blank NFers aren't gonna speak to you, but I am. He said, I hope you guys make it, man. Good luck. He said, I tried it. He said, I had nobody show up for my try. And so he said, you guys are trying. He said, good luck. He said, but he called them twice. He called them chicken dropping cowards because they wouldn't even speak to us. And they were afraid to. I mean, it's one thing if guys say, well, you know, you've gone too far. As far as I'm concerned, you're trying to kill my livelihood. That'd be one thing. That wasn't it. And of course, a lot of guys they weren't maybe afraid of me, but they were afraid of my potential. That, I never hurt anybody on purpose, but I mean, accidents happen, but I always could, and well, still can for that matter. I can fall on people, but that's a joke.
You were considered at that time a really great hand in the ring, and not only that, but an asset for a territory to have around, like in your booking knowledge and everything else, because of the guys that you were trained under there. Yeah. Did that have an effect? Did you feel that ever had an effect on your progression after you guys did this?
Yeah, it helped. I mean, Watts was going to make me his booker after Ernie Ladd was doing it when I was there. I was there from my one birthday. In fact, my birthday is just coming next Thursday, a week from tomorrow. I'll be 80. And
we can celebrate in Waterloo, Iowa.
Yes, yeah, that'll be Thursday there, yeah. And or maybe Friday, yeah. No, Thursday.
We can celebrate both days in Waterloo, Iowa.
That's right.
Yeah,
John celebrated in Waterloo before.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Well,
I got one of the greatest ribs of all time, which it's too long to go into, from Mr. Brisco in Waterloo, Iowa.
Well, I like it. Yeah. Oh, I worked from one birthday to the next for Watts, exactly 1 year.
Yeah.
And I was going to be his booker after Ernie, but I did something that was stupid. And I mean, and Bill changed his mind, which I didn't blame him. But I went from there to Atlanta, And started working with Ole, and Ole did the booking, but I ran the towns, and I had ideas that he'd listen to. I worked in the office, and I got paid extra for doing that. I was working too. Uh, yeah, it helped there. And then after that, I went to Florida I worked for Ole for 3 years, from 82 to 85, and then went from there to Florida. Wahoo was booking when I got there. Kevin Sullivan was supposed to take over. I was part of his entourage or menagerie,
Right.
whatever you call it. Menagerie might be better.
Darkness of Doom or something like that. wasn't it?
Yeah, I was bozo number 3, but no, it would have been a good gimmick if we'd have done it right. But what happened is Kevin was supposed to take the book, but something happened, and that suitor came to me one day. He came to my house, and he said it was Tuesday. He said, I need a TV tomorrow, and Kevin was supposed to have done it. Kevin was booking himself. Him and Mark Lewin were going out somewhere and booking for Savoldi, I think, and working with them. And then so he was supposed to have a TV for Hero. It was Tuesday, and Hero didn't have it. So he asked me, he said, can you give me a TV? I said, yeah, I can have you one in an hour. So that's where that comes in. When you asked me, did that experience help me? Yeah. I mean, at least the booking experience. Now, the going opposition experience, no. Both times I tried it, it cost me my job. I tried it in San Francisco too. And again, there, Roy Shires, local
Well,
promoters.
what was the story there? Because I've heard tales, but I never talked to you about it.
San Francisco?
San Francisco.
Well, his local promoters in Sacramento, Louis something, in San Jose, and Fresno, the guys came to me and said, because this is about 3 or 4 months after I had taken over. I didn't finish that story. Once Cow Palace started, the Cow Palace got to where, my first show there was 23 grand. Within 4 months of, it ran every 3 weeks, I think, or maybe 2, but within our 4th or 5th show, we're at 100 grand. So and Shires left me alone. I mean, every time he tried to take over the book, I would just hand it to him and say, okay, fine, I said, I'll be leaving. And I'm going to take Kevin with me. We're going to do this angle that's selling out right now. We'll do this somewhere else in about a month. So fine, you want to take it? And of course, he had to say, well, okay. He hated it. Well, these promoters came to me and they said, you ought to take it. You got the talent. The guys listen to you. They hated Roy. They despised him. And they should have. You know what he did when Gagne and McMahon were going to come in there and do opposition or whatever? He gave my sister sent me the paper. My name was in it. He did a 4-page spread in the LA Times exposing the business. Shires did.
Right.
I mean, just out and out, it's all crap and all blah, blah, just horrible. Now what we did, all we did was threaten to use it. He actually went out and did it. If I can't have it, it's like a wolverine. A wolverine can find a moose that's been killed, or maybe one that got, I don't think a wolverine could kill a moose, but say it found one that was shot and it died, and it would eat its fill. And then instead of just leaving it, whatever, it would put musk all over it so nobody else can eat it. He can't eat it either, but nobody else can either. That's a wolverine, a horrible, nasty animal, a vicious animal. I would rather fight a bear than a wolverine, but the Shires is like that. If I can't have it, nobody can. I don't care how many people I hurt. I don't care how many people lose work because of what I'm doing. So, but he earned what he got. So yeah, that's why I tried it. And again, one of the wrestlers that we included in our plan went and told Roy, and I got fired. But that's all right. You got to try anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look back at it with I think of the good things, and those things were all learning experiences. But I had a 15-year career basically, and then a few years later, added on where I really wasn't in the business. I was raising my boys. I might have been running a few shows, but I was staying at home. But when Bret Hart was inducted into the Hall in 2007, I think we were the class of 2007. I learned later that his career, he had stayed 14 years in New York with McMahon, 14 years straight. And he had a great career. But, and that's my 15 years. Like I said, I went to 13 different countries, worked in 13 different countries. And, I don't know, at least 20 territories in the United States. I might not have stayed in territories, but I worked there. And, and I got to see the world, and I got to experience different things. I got to work with all kinds of different people and things. And so my 15 years, I felt like were a great education for me. Not only, geography and learning how people are different places. I mean, even being in San Francisco on the gay scene with, that was the gay center of the universe. And we had a gay wrestler named Chris Colt, who was kind of like not a bodyguard, but like a guide to that kind of life, which I wasn't prejudiced against anybody, but I was leery. I was, a little nervous about being in a completely gay community. Well, Chris showed me I didn't have anything to worry about, and I appreciated that. Now that's kind of extreme, and maybe some of your listeners might want to hear that, but I didn't want to have ignorance in my life cause me to be unhappy. So by being able to travel and do those things, and I'll tell you in private some of the ribs Chris Colt pulled on me. Let me put it this way. Involved a steam bath in the YMCA in San Francisco, which has got to be the gay epicenter of the world. And a steam bath with me in it with no towel, thanks to Chris, and 4 people who came into the steam bath when Chris had left to get a drink of water, who were all different sizes in terms of their body size, but were all one size in terms of a certain member of their body that was kind of dragging on the floor. Who all walked up to me and propositioned me. Yeah.
Experiences. Speaking of experiences, Bob, you had one at the time you didn't realize how historical it was. The time that you and Adnan Casey, who was a heavyweight for Oklahoma State Cowboys back in the 60s and 50s there, you guys went over to and wrestled for Saddam Hussein. Is that correct?
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've only been in business 3 years. It was late 71, so actually 2 years. And I got this offer to go to Iraq, and I was told you just earlier about wanting to travel. Well, Iraq sounded great. So I didn't do my homework. There was no internet yet, and not even cell phones. And so I didn't do my homework. I thought, okay, Iraq, it's just going to be one match. And Saddam was not Saddam yet. He was, but he wasn't. He'd only killed, by the time I wrestled there, he'd only killed about 200, 300 people. He hadn't killed half a million.
He didn't have weapons of mass destruction at that time.
No, he didn't, but he wanted them. He was the vice president of the country when I went there, but he was the wrestling promoter. So
Saddam was a wrestling promoter.
Saddam Hussein was a wrestling promoter.
He was a wrestling promoter.
Wow.
Yeah, he was.
How many wrestlers in the world can say they work for promoter Saddam Hussein? That's awesome.
Adnan Casey, and I might be the only one left who's still alive. A bunch of English guys were, not a bunch, but half a dozen. George Gordienko was the first. Andre the Giant was second. They're both gone. I was third. But they have a stadium, and this is going to sound incredible. I had a hard time believing it myself.
And there were massive people there too, right? Massive numbers.
Well, the stadium, I checked it. I assumed the stadium would hold at least 100,000 people. The stadium, when I checked it, said it seated 40,000 people. Casey said there were 250,000 people in there. I believe there was at least 200,000 in there, because I mean, when I saw sumo matches in Japan, there would be three Japanese fans sitting on one seat, and then two or three on the next one. So in like 4 seats, there might be 15 people that sit in those 4 seats. So that gave me, and most of the Iraqi people are not big; they're small, they're slender. Not a lot, not a lot of fat people over there. Only rich people. But I believe there were a couple 100,000 people there, and the wrestling was a propaganda machine for Saddam, for his political party. They did a coup, a military coup, and took power, and they only had 10,000 people in their party. So the party was really, really weak. And so what they used, the wrestling, Saddam got the idea. Casey came home after being in the States for 15 years. He had married a United States citizen. He was a United States citizen himself. He had worked in the United States with his college and working. He'd been at least 15 years. He went home because of something in the family, to visit his family. And Saddam heard about, there was a human interest piece that was in the paper or on TV about him making good as this pro wrestler in the United States. So Saddam got the idea of using him to start pro wrestling in Iraq, with the idea of making entertainment. And they held at the stadium, and I don't know if Saddam thought it would do what it did, but when they drew 200,000 people, let's put it this way, there were 4 TV cameras around the ring, one in each corner, up on a platform. And there were about a half dozen, or on each side of the ring, with half dozen still photographers. And the television was sent out to, it was closed circuit. They didn't have cable yet. It was closed circuit. It was sent out to every Mideast country. And it was a big deal. It was like a Muhammad Ali fight. Our match, there were nothing else on the card. There were no undermatch. There was no other any kind of entertainment or anything beforehand. There was just the match, and that was it. And so I didn't find this out till later, because they didn't tell me. That's the only reason I wrote the book about it, because they didn't tell me that my life was in danger. They brought me over there. What happened was that Gordienko, the way when they wrestled the first match, Casey won. It was a 2 out of 3 fall match. There was 3 20-minute Commonwealth rules. 2 out of 3 fall match. Each fall is 20-minute time period. You have to win 2 out of 3 falls to win the match. Now you can win by DQ. You can have 2 DQs and win 2 different rounds and win the match. But Gordienko, won the first match. Casey beat Gordienko in, I'll say 10, 12 minutes. They had a riot that killed 6 people after that first fall. The second fall, it took about 20 minutes to get. Now, around the ring were about 1,000 guys with AK-47 machine guns and clubs that were protecting the governor of Baghdad and his party. And even with those guys laying around them with clubs and shooting people, it took 20 minutes to get the people back into where they weren't, going crazy. They were rioting out of joy. I mean, they weren't mad. They were out of just hysteric joy. And so Gordienko was supposed to take second fall. He told Casey, no way. Beat me with your fall. Beat me in the fall. You're finished in 10 minutes. And that's what they did. Had another riot. What happened was Saddam used these matches. This was all being seen, and what they were doing commentary. That look at what the Ba'ath Party, they represented all those people in the stadium, those 200-some thousand people were party members. That made his party look much, much stronger. Plus all those guys around the ring with machine guns. Now you're looking at somebody who looks pretty strong, and some people, these guys were biting their toenails off with nervous anxiety that somebody was going to pull a coup on them. So then there was a year and a half between matches. There's 2 years before the next one. Andre was second. He wasn't Andre yet. He was I can't think of it. Senior moment. He had another name. It was a year later that McMahon Senior gave him to Andre, but he came in, and because Andre could not do any amateur type wrestling. Now Gordenko was a great shooter.
Yeah, George was the real deal.
Great.
Yeah.
They had I saw their match. They had a very tight looking. Well, Andre couldn't wrestle like that. Plus he was so big. And before the match, Saddam pulled, Andre scared the crap out of everybody because he was so big. Before the match, Saddam pulled Casey aside and said, he's big, but he's rhymes with Ussy. I know you can beat him. And if he hurts you in any way, he's going to get this. And Saddam showed Casey his gun, his 45. In fact, if Andre hurts him, he's going to shoot him. So that's as he was getting in the ring to have the match. So he got in the ring and he immediately changed. Andre was going to want a fall. He changed that and he beat Andre in 2 falls in about 4 minutes each fall. Because he's afraid to work along with him because they were kind of exposing, you know, what they were doing wasn't super like amateur type looking. And boy, if Saddam found out you were fooling him. So I was third and they brought me over there. Now what happened, I was a year and a half after Andre. What happened at that time, after the first match, they built a mansion. The governor of Baghdad on national television adopted Casey as his son. Figuratively, but they didn't do paperwork. But he said, "You're my son." They built a mansion for him. They put a statue in front of it that wasn't solid gold, but it was gold plated. A statue of him, about life-size statue in front of his mansion. And car, they made him a minister of physical education. He was making a couple $100,000 a year. That's when he won the first match. And then Andre came in, and by the time that Casey beat Andre and the way he beat him, there was some talk, there was starting to be some talk about, a lot of people have been educated over there, the intelligence of Iraqi people, the university, a lot of those people have been educated in the West and seen pro wrestling. And they figured this was just the same thing. And there was some talk about, that maybe it wasn't all on the up and up. So they brought me over there to beat him. And I did. Now, I didn't beat him in the match. But what I did is I took the first fall with a pen. Now, Casey said he never was penned. But then in his book about our matches, he never mentioned my first 2 matches with him. The one he wrote about was the third one, about a year later. I went back there a year later because I was so scared the first time that I thought I was a coward. I thought I was a coward because I couldn't sleep. I had PTSD. And so I went back just to prove to myself I wasn't a coward. But the first, after I beat him in the first fall, we went through the second fall. But what happened, Casey got gashed open somehow, and it was by his own doing. That's so bad that it took 25 stitches, and I thought there was going to be now I found out years later that if Andre even hurt Casey, he's going to get shot. Not only do I look like I hurt him, I look like I butchered him. His eyebrow fell down across his face.
Wow.
Bleeding, his blood spurting up in the air, all 4 TV cameras, and he dropped this surgical instrument that he used to. And so, you talk about death. But anyway, we went through the second and the third fall, and I won the 1 fall, but I didn't win the match. So they didn't raise my hand, and they didn't give me the belt, the Commonwealth belt. But Casey didn't win the match. Saddam wasn't going to have it. I went back to my hotel room. Thank God. I've been there already 14 days. Thank God. We're going home tomorrow. And the English promoter who booked me there came in and said, "Bob, I got news." I said, "Hey, what time are we leaving tomorrow?" He said, "I got news. we're not going, we're going back. We're not going home. I said,
Wow.
why not? He said, the governor wants another match. I said, well, tell the governor to, it rhymes with GFY, because I'm not going to do it. He said, well, if you don't, he said, you won't find a reservation on any plane out of here until you do. And I still refused. And I scared me so bad the match we had. I mean, Casey went, I thought he went berserk in the ring. And, you know, I was green. I'd only been in business 2 years. So I refused. They did a thing where they tortured some people right in front of me and let me know that if I didn't agree that there was going to be some more people, so I had to agree. And I went back and after the second one, and that match, he knocked me out, and he wasn't supposed to do that. He knocked me out and won overwhelmingly. And was
Legit knocked you out?
Yes, he used Dusty's elbow. That was his finish, like Dusty used.
Right. Yeah.
And he hit me. He hit me with it, and I got up the first time. I saw stars, but I got up. He did a second time. I didn't get up till the referee could have counted 30. Well, they went nuts, crazy. The ring filled up. The two guys came over and pointed pistols at me. Then they were going to shoot each other. I mean, it was insane. Meanwhile, I'm concussed from this being bludgeoned, and this is going on in front of me. Casey went crazy because he didn't expect he just I don't know why he went crazy, but he went crazy. And so they managed. They all leave. They get their 1,000 guys, get the machine gun guys, get all Casey and the governor, and Saddam never came down to the ringside because he was too exposed down there. Anybody could have just walked up and shot him. So he was upstairs watching. But they got all those guys out of there. It took me an hour to get out of the ring and get back to the dressing room.
Did you have any protection at all?
I had a bunch of local cops, not the machine gun guys. I had cops. They just had sticks. They didn't have pistols. Two guys had pistols, but most of them just had sticks. And there was about 30 of them. And they would open the aisle, and I would go to start down it, and then it would close up, and I'd have to retreat because there were people waiting. They had knives out, so or sticks of bamboo. So about an hour went by. I've got all this in my book. It's a long story. I had to threaten to shoot. I got the pistol away from one of the cops. I had to threaten to shoot the photographer. There was a TV guy taping what was going on. There was no reason to be taping what was going on unless it was for somebody's benefit. Now, I was going to get scragged, and you know, they wanted to have it on tape. So one of the guys that charged in the ring had a pistol, and I talked about Kern following me in the ring. When this guy came through the ropes, I hit him with a knee to the side of the head. I don't know if he woke up for a week, but I got his pistol, and I meant to keep originally was to keep the rest of these cops from coming in the ring or letting people in the ring. So when I saw the guy taping the match, you know, I mean, I talk about adrenaline and PTSD. I could see the light was on. I mean, the taping light is on. So I pointed the pistol not at the lens, at the photographer, and I said to the camera, I said, if you don't get somebody down here to get me out of here, you're going to have a dead photographer.
Huh.
The photographer jumped down and took off. I didn't blame him. Anyway, about 3 or 4 minutes later, here comes about 3 dozen of the machine gun guys. And they came down whacking and bludgeoning and shooting guns in the air. And the crowd just split. It was like I walking, you know, I just waltzed out of there. But they made me stay there until they emptied the stadium. So here's 200,000 people. There's a highway about like a normal 4-lane highway. It's made of cobblestones, and about 99% of the people that came to matches walked from Baghdad. Baghdad was 3 miles away, and they were walking back. Took an hour or so for the stadium to empty. So they made me wait until the stadium was empty, and then we go to leave, and the road's full of people. So I said, "Well, this doesn't make any sense. Just wait." They said, "No, you're going now." Is it? Can you guys hear that telephone? Is that bothering you? Can you hear a telephone?
I can't hear it.
Okay, good, good. Mine's ringing. I'm glad you can't hear it. So what I had to do was we got part of the way out, and these cobblestones on the road were about the size of a bushel. They were square, but they're about the size of a bushel basket. They were about a foot in height. They probably weighed 80, 100 pounds. And we're on our way out in this truck, and we're going through the people, and really slow. And this colonel and the police is driving, and I've got one of the machine guns, the colonel, this machine gun guy sitting next to me. He's the one that's dictating all this, when we're going to leave and all this. And all of a sudden, one of these rocks comes and hits the hood of the truck and bounces over the top of it. And I, put a dent in the hood and the driver, I looked at this colonel next to me. He didn't blink. And I looked at the driver. This colonel looked like he was going to foul his pants. And so the colonel just said, keep going, keep going. We got a little further. Another one came, and this one hit the hood, but it hit the windshield. It shattered the windshield, and the glass hit this colonel in the face. And the glass, he had little shards of glass all in his face and his eyes and everything else. And so he had this truck was a deucing or a 3/4 ton truck like the American military has, like the show MASH, those ambulances they had in MASH in Korea, with the cross on the side. That size truck. That's what we were in. They had eight soldiers in the back and the 3 of us in the front. I should have been in the back, but they wouldn't let me sit back there. They wanted me to be seen up there. So what I did is I took control of the truck and headed off. I got off that road and I had to drive through these guys. What happened? There were some guys that worked for the machine gun guy. They had carpets and they were flinging these stones. They were actually flinging them. There was a guy on each corner of these Arabian carpets. Those things would hold probably a 500-pound stone. And what they were doing is they were using it like a sling, and they were slinging these rocks. And obviously, the only thing I could figure out, they were trying to disable the truck. And then they ended up, the colonel took his guys and they left me out there. So I took off in the truck, and I managed to get out of there. I got back to a place in Baghdad. There was a place in the Belgian embassy had a United States section, a United States interest section, and had Americans working there that when an American had trouble, you could go to that section and they would help you. I knew where it was. I had found out where it was because I was looking for help before the match ever started. And I managed to get over there, and they helped get me out of the country. So you're wondering, well, why in the hell would you go back a year later? Again, because I was worried that about my own spine, or not having a yellow streak. And the other thing was that politics changed. Richard Nixon had become president, and he had warmed up to Saddam, and so they weren't so anti-American anymore, or not Saddam, but the president. So it was safe. It was safe for me to go.
How did you get out, Bob? Was it through the military, or did you fly commercial, or how did you get out of the country?
I got out in a casket.
And what?
I got out in a casket.
Casket.
And the problem after the matches, there was an Iraqi soldier killed, And so when it was time for, I was in the embassy and they didn't know I was there. So they had to get me out of there. And I was dealing with American people. I think it was, the guy never identified himself. He didn't say I'm CIA or anything else. He just basically was very, and there were some military guys, American military Marines that helped me.
So at
And,
that point, you had gone to the embassy and you were under a U.S. watch at that
Yeah,
time.
I went to the embassy. I had on Arabic clothing. All my clothes was in a bag. I found a bazaar where everybody was still at the matches or were on their way home. And I found this bazaar that had only one shop open, and the lady that was running was half asleep, was an older woman. And I bought a robe and sandals and Arabic clothing and a big bag to put all my stuff in. And I walked from there. I scouted this place out. I got all this in my book, but I scouted this out in the week before the match because I didn't know what was going to happen. If there was any way I could get there before the match, I was going to try to get there to avoid having the match, the second one. And I should have, because I almost got killed in the stadium. But I managed to get to the embassy, and the only way they could get me out of there was they posed me as this slain American soldier who was being taken home for burial. And at the last minute, some of the Saddam's people showed up, and they were standing around the coffin wanting to look in it, but the Marine guys wouldn't let them do it. And this Marine sergeant came up, and he was waving a paper, and he was saying, we bluffed him. He said, I've talked to Saddam, and Saddam says that you will get away from here and quit bothering us. And they were all scared to death of him. So that's how I got out of there. But
Well, they put you in a casket and then shipped you out in a casket.
if they put me, they had a plane. They had a plane come in. The embassy brought in a plane, and they put me out. Yeah, it was a small plane. It wasn't. They loaded the casket like into the rear hatch. It wasn't a drop down the back.
Yeah.
But yeah, and as soon as we got out of Iraqi airspace, I got out of the casket and sat there and drank a couple of beers with the guys on the way home. But yeah, it was.
You had some beers in the casket?
Sorry.
You had some beers in the casket?
Man, I should have had, it's a
You
shame
had
they
a
didn't have,
tap in there, man. It wouldn't have been bad.
it's a shame they didn't have the pens back then, because when those guys showed up and there was action, they wanted to see inside the coffin. Man, they opened it up and I was recognizable.
Okay, Bob, I've known you a long time, and you're a very intelligent man, and you went back there.
Yeah,
Wow, that kind of changes the perception sometimes.
yeah. Well, like I say, I came back that year, and in 1970 and 71, I checked this on the stats. There's a stats for pro wrestling that's really accurate. I wrestled in the United States. I wrestled about 220 times in 70 and 71. In 72, after that happened in 72, in 72, I wrestled 38 times. I came back to Florida and I was booked there, but I didn't stay long. I couldn't stand to be in front of a crowd. I wrestled 38 times in 72. I went to Europe for the Olympics, and again, this is one of the reasons I was worried about my courage, if I had it. And I went to the Olympics, and that they had that terrorist where they broke in and took the Israelis captured, and
Right.
that was horrible. And I went back. I was working in England. I did wrestle some matches there, but they had matches where you could wrestle on a stage, and the crowd was all out in one side of you, and that I could tolerate that. So I had my girlfriend with me, and got booked in Iraq, and there was financial reason too. It was going to cost me about $1,500 to get her there not booked in Australia. It's going to cost about $1,500 to get her to Australia. And the wrestling promoter, I asked that English promoter, actually, we were staying at his house. He was so guilty about, the guy that booked me in Iraq, he was so guilty about what he did that we stayed at his house a month. He never had the nerve to kick us out. Well, we had our own bedroom, and his wife liked us. But I asked him to front me $1,500 to buy my girlfriend's ticket, and he said no, but you can make that money by wrestling in Baghdad again. And I said, well, why would I, you know what happened? Why would I ever go back there? He said, well, things have changed. They're not so anti-American anymore. And so I did some research, and I spoke to some of the English boys, and I figured it was, again, I was ready to quit the business, and I didn't want to. I liked it, but it's just, it was one of those. I had PTSD for a long time. I used to drink, not walking around, stumbling around drunk, but I used to drink to help me sleep at night. I drank maybe half pint, a couple of stiff drinks. I did it for years. I knew that was wrong. I mean, I was an athlete. It's okay to have a few beers, but you're not hydrating yourself when you're drinking booze. So, but I got over it. I look back on that, and it was a hell of an adventure. And
hell of a story.
Well, I've had an interesting life with not in a bunch of things. Like you have had a lot of steady developments that are all like being a Citizen of the Year in Florida, American Citizen for Florida, and those kind of awards and things that you've gotten. You've had those steadily for most of your life. I haven't had that. I've had some things. When we were in Scouts, I was awarded the 3 highest awards that a volunteer scouter can get. I was about 10 years with my boys. So, I had some accomplishments too, but I did the adventures like that Iraq thing, that doesn't happen to too many, I mean, I'm not proud of it, but it is something of note. I can talk about it now, and hey, I'm still alive and healthy. And
you wrote a book. Tell us where we can find this book and about it. Now I'm coming to Iowa, what you're there, and I want to see a book there.
Well, I will. I'm sorry, I don't have a copy right here. You want me to go get one?
No, but you can tell us about it. And
well, it's called Wrestling for Saddam, and it's basically the story I told you. I'm going to bring some and try to sell at Waterloo. I don't know if they'll sell, but maybe. I'm not. Jimmy Rashke does real well in selling stuff because he's just so remembered, and the guy. I've been out of it so long. I don't know if anybody remembers me at all.
Bob, everybody remembers you.
Well, I mean the fans that come. Yeah. But I'm going to try to sell it, and I might sell a few and help pay for the trip.
Folks, this is Waterloo, Iowa, July 21st, 23rd at the Dan Gable Museum, the George Tragus Lou Thez National Wrestling Hall of Fame banquet that goes on. JBL's been honored there, Bob's been honored there, and I've been honored there. My brother's been honored there. It's a great museum. If you got any inkling to like wrestling in any way, shape, or form, or any type of wrestling, you owe yourself a trip to Waterloo, Iowa, to come to Waterloo to see the Dan Gable Museum.
Yeah, it's it's a one of a kind museum because I'm in the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, the one that was in New York and then went out to Wichita Falls. That's strictly pro, and that's fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it. And I'm in the National AAU Hall of Fame. That's amateur wrestling, and that's fine. And I'm in the Greater Lansing Sports Hall of Fame, and we have people like Magic Johnson and John Smoltz and some gold medal winning wrestlers. So I'm proud to be in that too. but the museum at Waterloo is both amateur and Dan Gable is one of the greatest wrestlers in the history of the world,
Right.
not just American.
World.
Any ever. He's in the top 10 ever of wrestlers in the world. Ever. Back to the days of the ancient Greeks. He's excellence like you've never seen. We have Dan Gable, who's associated with us as pro wrestlers, and we have people like you and me who have been amateur wrestlers, and Jimmy Raschke, Baron von Raschke, Jimmy, who was third in the world as a heavyweight wrestler for the representing the United States. You have people like that, and then you have great pro wrestling talent too. You know, we have some of that. I was a little of both. I never really a big, someone like Dusty or like Dan Gable at either, but in my own way, had some accomplishments. But the people who want to come to see the museum, you'll get a chance to see both that. You'll see the very top echelon of pro wrestlers as well as top echelon of amateur wrestlers too. And plus there's mixed martial arts people there too, aren't there?
Right, yeah. Yeah, we do MMA guys every year now, and we've had the best of the best. We've had Couture in there. We've had Cormier there. Had Ken Shamrock was there last year, which Ken was a big hit to everybody. Oh yeah, it's a mixed martial arts type of deal, and it's a fantastic museum. You get to see so much. So we, Bob, I really appreciate your time and coming here, and look forward to seeing you in Waterloo. And John, this has been an experience.
It has been wonderful, Bob. It is such a pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about you, especially from my good friend, Mr. Brisco there. So it's such an honor to be able to talk to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, man, it's nice to meet you this way too. I mean, I hope to see you. I hope to see you in person so I can give you a hug.
I look forward to it.
I want to say one last thing, Sharp, to the fans out there who might be listening to this. Anybody that comes to Waterloo who has heard this and comes to Waterloo, would you please come up to me and tell me that you listen to this podcast or saw this podcast, and because if you do, I want to give you a hug. Definitely a handshake. If some of you men don't want to be hugged, or women, a handshake. But I'd really, really, really like to see you. So again, thank you guys.
Thank you.